Hi, you guys all know me. I'm Barbara Swanson. I live in Rhode Island. I'm a volunteer for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. I'm here to tell a story of from Reverend Kurt Warner. He couldn't be here tonight, but his story fit the red flag bill. My job as a volunteer this year is as a survivor engagement lead. As a survivor engagement lead for moms, my role is to engage survivors in moms, to get them to feel comfortable testifying, to tell their story, so that maybe you might feel a little bit of what they've gone through, and maybe you would pass good gun sense bills. So this weekend, when we heard, and I have to applaud you, you were coming together on Tuesday, and we all lost power on the weekend. I spent my Saturday calling survivors. There are 68 survivors in our state that are with our organization, and I called 68 people, and I heard their stories. Now, this isn't in my script, but let me assure you that there are at least two that definitely would have fit the red flag bill. And we know that there are more of those people out there. Those are just the people that we're aware of. When I asked them if they would share their story, they told me no, they couldn't. And I want you to take a minute and think, for someone to be able to say, I knew that my loved one was going to hurt themselves or someone else, and there was nothing I could do about it. How horrible to lose your son or your daughter or your spouse because there was nothing you could do about it. So they're not going to come here and sit here and tell you that because they feel guilty. And we all know families. It might not have happened in your life, but you know a family that this could have helped. And I just want you to take a minute and think, thank God it wasn't your kid. That's what I spent my weekend doing, is talking to these people. So I'm here to tell you today of another story of a Rhode Islander who couldn't be with us today. Reverend Kurt Warner is a member of Moms Demand Action. He's a pastor at the Chapel Street United Church of Christ in Lincoln and a member of the Religious Coalition for Violence-Free Rhode Island. This is Kurt's story. Kurt's uncle Malcolm was a living embodiment of the G.I. Joe doll he played with as a child. Through the eyes of an imaginative 12-year-old boy who knew nothing of the hell of war, Kurt thought his uncle was some sort of drab green dressed superhero. He would listen with rapt attention as he would regale Kurt with his harrowing stories of daring feats of combat and his near-death experiences in the jungles of Vietnam. It would take him another 30-plus years before he made the choice of taking his own life due to mental illness. As the years moved on from the innocent days of Kurt's childhood, he learned a lot about life, both in school and out. One of life's more troubling and complex issues with which he was called to wrestle was how it was that his uncle's mental health could be allowed to deteriorate to such a degree that he would become a danger to himself and others. The authorities knew he had several weapons in his home, including his favorite sidearm. Yet there seemed to be nothing anyone could do to protect his family or himself from the gathering chaos of his illness. There were stories of cousins barricading themselves in the bathroom to protect themselves from Uncle Malcolm. There were nights he would never return home, and the evenings, most evenings, of his slow self-anesthetizing himself into a semi-conscious stupor in front of the television. There was a time Uncle Malcolm decided to individually pluck out every eyebrow hair with a pair of tweezers, and the time he decided it was a good idea to refinance his home and purchase a new Lamborghini the day he got laid off from work. Through the years of his spiraling down into oblivion, the local medical institutions were well aware of his worsening mental condition. His wife was an RN at the local hospital, in which he had been brought to and treated on several occasions throughout the years. It had been recommended he be admitted to the local mental hospital for observation and testing, but he would refuse treatment time and time again. On June 5th, 2007, Kurt received a phone call from his cousin. Her father, Uncle Malcolm, had chosen to take his own life earlier in the day. Kurt's cousin felt the need to describe the details of the events over the phone. It seems that Uncle Malcolm always kept his sidearm loaded and in a locked safe in his bedroom. On that morning, after having removed the gun from the safe, he calmly, almost gleefully, called his son to his bedroom. "Hey, Jeff, come here a minute. I got something to show you." Upon entering the room, his uncle placed the barrel of the gun against his temple and pulled the trigger. Later in the day, his son was left to wash his father's brains off the bedroom wall so his mother would not have to. We know that over 100,000 Vietnam vets have killed themselves since the end of the war. I happen to know the psychiatrist in charge of that hotline in New York. He and I went to high school together, and we talked frequently. That's nearly twice the number of deaths in combat. We also know that in the current war, the longest in our nation's history, suicide takes the lives of 22 veterans a day. Approximately 66% of those suicides come at the hands of a firearm. Something can be done to stop these preventable tragedies from occurring. A red flag law empowers family members or police to take guns away from a person who may pose a danger to themselves or others. This person's access to firearms is blocked until they can demonstrate the risk is over. Essentially, extreme risk protection orders are temporary restraining orders for guns. With a red flag law on the books, Uncle Malcolm's family or the local police would have been able to demonstrate that he was an imminent danger to himself and his family, and petition a court to force him to surrender his weapons. While it is impossible to determine how many deaths a red flag law could have prevented in Washington, D.C., in California, and in Parkland, Florida, red flag laws could have successfully provided another layer of protection for Kurt's uncle and his family. The warning signs were present for decades. A red flag could have prevented this tragedy from occurring in Kurt's family. I also know that the military has a red flag ban. They always have. Because they have guns, and they need the ability to take those guns away. It seems to me to be only common sense, and that's for moms. And for me, as a personal private citizen, I want those assault weapons away. I don't want to be homeschooling my grandchildren. I know that we lose more with this, but all those bills are good. We live in Rhode Island.
Barbara, let's try to keep it to these bills.
Okay, so let's the assault rifle.
We're going to hear that on another night, and
oh no,
and
that's yours. The other one. The bump stock. I'm sorry.
Okay, very good.
Bump stock. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of witnesses to come after you, and I
just
just don't want it to turn into...
I just want you to do something to make Rhode Island safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Yes. Second Vice Chair Hagan McEntee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barbara, I want to thank you for sharing the story, and I also want to thank Reverend David for what he spoke about as well. And I want to add to the stories. My sister is a psychologist, and she expresses the same regret that both of you have expressed about not being able to do anything with the information that she has. And so it is a real problem. There are people out there who do know about the mental illness that exists among certain people in our society, and if they have guns, that's not a good thing. So this red flag bill will address that portion of violence in our community, and I thank you for bringing your stories forward, because I think that's very important for us to hear. So thank you for coming all the way from Narragansett and South Kingstown.
You're welcome, Rick.
And you do great work, both of you.
Thank you.